Welcome to another edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. I'm sure there were odds somewhere posted on this one, but this would have been a case where I would have been the guy that was gargling with embalming fluid because I was on a radio show with a friend of mine here in Palm Beach, Florida, the other day, and he asked me, "What do you think? Will Bill Belichick actually take the North Carolina coaching job if it's offered to him?" And I said, "Nah, I really can't see it. I thought his obsession with surpassing Don Shula as the all-time winningest coach in NFL history. He's 14 wins away from establishing that mark. Probably would drive him to wait around patiently for somebody to finally concede one of the 32 owners that, you know what we need? You know who we need? We need Bill Belichick." But nonetheless, as Jim Lampley said, when Michael Moore got knocked out by George Foreman after beating the fucking snot out of Foreman for the first 11 and a half rounds of the fight, it happened. It happened, and it certainly creates a very interesting dynamic as Belichick will be announced as the new North Carolina head coach, dropping down to the college ranks and taking a $10 million a year payday to coach the North Carolina Tar Heels and be in the ACC. Sets up a lot of interesting possibilities also because when you see the box, who has the edge, offense versus defense, when they play the University of Miami, which box you think will be checked? In our opinion, when it's Mario Cristobal versus Bill Belichick, or for that matter, many of the other coaches in the ACC. Some people thought that Belichick's success was only driven by Tom Brady. I'm not one that would be willing to concede that for even a second because I think they both sort of needed each other. And yet, if Belichick doesn't say to Drew Bledsoe, "Hey, by the way, Drew, you're benched," after a reasonably decent performance by an unknown Tom Brady, he was known as the Michigan quarterback, was not exactly lighting the world on fire. As he went as a sixth-round pick, and you would have to attribute a lot of Brady's success to the fact that he played for Belichick, much like we're seeing with quarterbacks that have been sort of vagabonds around the league. Sam Darnold being a prime example. When he's with the Jets, no dice. He looks horrible. Looks like one of the biggest busts that you'll ever see. All of a sudden, he finds his way after meandering through a couple of different spots, ends up in Minnesota, and he finds himself in the right system, and he's shining. But the other thing, I guess, if they do a tail of the tape with Bill Belichick, you would have to give him a lot of credit when they got to the aspect that banging an attractive 24-year-old at 70-something, does he still have it? You would have to say there is, literally just pouring Viagra into his throat, or the guy's still got the moxie and the competitive desire and the spirit to go on and have some success. So we'll see how that plays out. Also interesting would be the idea that even at $10 million a year, there are freshman quarterbacks, as exhibited by the Michigan Wolverines, that'll be making more money than Bill Belichick will be making for coming back to the college ranks and coaching at North Carolina. Now, I would have lost my ass if I was betting on that because I said on Tuesday on the radio show, didn't think it was going to happen. But if you are betting, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen as well. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, football, the NHL, UFC, as I've been saying, many big fights on top of these couple of months. BetOnline is the place to go. So head there today, BetOnline, and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Look at this handsome gentleman that just broadcast here. We welcome again back in. He did a fine job once again pinch hitting for our good friend Scotty M on the Tuesday show, and he comes back to rejoin us in his usual spot here on Bury Your Bookie. Mike Jones joining us on the program. Michael, how are you, my friend?
Great to be with you, Jeff. I'm wonderful. Interesting news you opened up with. A little close to home to see one of our ex-Giants head backwards. It's a rarity. I think Pete Carroll's like the only one that I think has had success leaving the NFL to the college coaching ranks. And this guy might be a little different with a ring. I'm not sure how many guys with a ring have gone backwards and been highly successful. So this would be very interesting to watch.
6 rings for Bill Belichick. You wonder how he's going to relate to college kids today, especially college kids that are making money. But as we've been talking about throughout the many weeks we've been doing a show here on Bury Your Bookie, The college game maybe is more of a wild west than the pro game is because there's no salary cap. There seems to be no organization that can regulate or administrate any kind of rules or a platform to operate under. And you would think that Belichick would probably thrive in this spot. So we'll see. But it does make it more interesting. And the ACC certainly is going to be challenged with Belichick and what he possibly can do with North Carolina. I would think a lot of alumni are going to come forward and start dipping into their wallets and their cachet to make sure that Belichick has the kind of players that he's looking for. He did kind of bomb out in the personnel category in the last few years of running the Patriots, but we'll see how that relates to the college game. I would have lost my ass, though. I would have never thought that he would have taken. I don't know what kind of proposition they had out there about Belichick becoming a North Carolina coach, but as I was saying, as recently as Tuesday, I was thinking, nah, that ain't happening. So shows you what we know. Big week as we start out the bowl season. And I know a lot of people try to get back at even with their bookmakers during the college bowl games. Many different angles that you have to examine now. It's not just team versus team, but who the fuck is playing for these teams?
Right.
Saw an interview with Cam Ward. He says that he's going to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Iowa State, and he's looking forward to it. I can't imagine that that would be a favorable thing for him to do, although I would also think that some of these NIL deals, he probably got about $5 million to play for the University of Miami in a big bidding war
Right.
as he was in the transfer portal. But I would have to think that there was a contingency to NIL. It would be the only reason that you would see a player of that caliber, first-round pick in the NFL, going to be one of the first quarterbacks taken, to drive him to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando in what appears to be a very meaningless spot. There would have to be some kind of contractual contingency that was attached to that.
Yes, I think that has to be true, and I think it's a good thing. I think what's happened is when we grew up, and not saying that we're dinosaurs, but I always
We
thought
are dinosaurs, Mike.
I,
You
I,
look like
always,
you're a
I
dinosaur.
always thought the bowl game meant something. It was
I'm
like the big
prehistoric.
thing.
Yeah.
And like I just use a novice fan in my family that once the SEC regular season ends, she doesn't care about the bowl game unless they're going to an SEC championship or playing. So the mindset of the fan base, the mindset of the player, everything might be that the season's over after the regular season. The bowl game doesn't mean much. To me, it's an end. It's a good thing. It's matchups that come from different areas that you get really enthralled with who's playing who. But the last half decade or more so, you've seen where these kids just don't play in these games to prepare for the NFL draft and who's into it, who's not. I can remember a game I bet years ago when Houston was in the top 10, and I know the guy, Ed Oliver, didn't play, and then he started a trend of like 10 defensive players didn't play and 3 offensive players. And I think Army went in there and put up a 70 spot as a 7-point underdog. And you watch this and you're saying, what is going on here? What is happening? And that was one of the shockers to me. And then I started really noticing it happening. So if you're betting these bowl games, I think day of is when you want to bet. We could predict things here, but until you see what really is going on there and hear what the reports are, who's playing, who's not, I kind of would stay away because you're going to see jumps in the lines. If you're going to guess gamble, take a long shot at a dog plus 10, thinking that maybe something will happen with the favorite that because they're the better team, some of their better players might sit out. But it is a really tough time to bet. And I know guys that are really, really sharp that I've talked to out in the desert that have stayed off now and wait till these last minutes to play.
Might be wise to send some Christmas cards or holiday cards to the SIDs around the country, the various schools, because you definitely would like to rely on some inside information as to who's going to be in the game and who's not, if they have that. A professor has a great story about the worst beat of his lifetime when he knew the SID at the University of Massachusetts. And they had Marcus Camby on the roster at the time, and he was clearly the key element to any success that they might have. He was getting against Rutgers. He was he had Rutgers, and he was getting like 15 points in a game. UMass, Marcus Camby, favored in many of their ball games.
Yep.
So he gets the inside information that Camby's not going to play. Nobody really knows this. And the professor is privy to this information, and he goes ahead and he takes the 15 points with Rutgers. Game was at Rutgers, and Camby, sure enough, at game time, it's announced that he's not going to play. So Rutgers is hammering the University of Massachusetts. They're up like 12 points. He's getting 15. There's no way that he can lose. They get to halftime, and the Black Panthers stage an in-arena protest, and they march out on the court, and they do a sit-down, protesting whatever it was, whatever inequity was going on that they were very much solidly behind, and they weren't leaving the court. And so they ended up canceling the ball game, and the
Wow.
professor's bet was refunded. But nonetheless, I mean, he was in a position to make a magnificent score. All they had to do was play the rest of the second half, and there was no way it was going to reverse, and he was going to lose to the spread. And sure enough, the best of inside information ended up going completely to waste. We have a lot of stuff going on,
Yeah.
Mike Jones, that we
Yeah.
want to look into here today on
Sure.
the program, including a very interesting matchup. My good
Mhm.
friend Al Bernstein, who I worked with many times on boxing telecasts,
Mhm.
used to always you would have two guys going in a four-rounder, one of which had a 2-4 record. The other guy was making his pro debut, and Al would always characterize it as this is a really intriguing matchup. He loved the word intriguing, but it is intriguing. This matchup, you've been on the case, I think, that the 49ers have been overplayed
Yeah.
all year and
Mhm.
overrated by the bookies. They are 3-point favorites tonight against the Rams, who surely have some firepower and a lot of incentive in this ball game. 49ers at home, that line has moved slightly towards the 49ers. I saw it at 2.5 yesterday. I'm seeing it at 3 right now in the source that I'm using. Of course, it's the New York Post. Degenerate's dream when it comes to a sports section. But what do you think? 49ers looked like they got it together a little bit last week.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit of false money that they created here tonight?
Here's you look at this like where the 49ers were last year. I mean, they make it to the Super Bowl, winning tradition. You watched them bounce back last week against the Bears, who I was playing around with a little bit, watching the line drop. I had it at a good number, thinking that, the 49ers would have packed it in. And then you get wind of George Kittle held a team only meeting, and evidently they went at each other, both offense and defense, and everybody stood up and was accountable. And then that game was never close Sunday. You feel like in a 4-day week, he rolls over. Probably that emotion, all that does stay. Rivalry game. Rams come up with a huge win. So they're looking at tape to say this might be as good an offense as they've seen. A lot of things to me point the short work week. The team on the road usually has a little bit of a struggle, though not a big travel, obviously, up the coast to the game. I kind of lean 49ers here. I just think there's a reason why they're 2.5, now 3, which is when you see those games move on and off that key number, there's always something that drives that money there. Someone smart usually has it. I have it at 2.5. Yeah, I just, I like the Niners in this spot. The season's on the line. This is basically a playoff game. Losing at 2 in the division and going down 2 games to the Rams would kind of signal their fate. The wild card is gone now. So they got to stay in the division. I like them tonight. I think they show up. I think they play well. And I think if you look at some of these offensive efficiency numbers, Matthew Stafford had the game of all games. I think it's in the top 10 of all time on Sunday. Does that translate through 4 days later? Do they keep that? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say San Francisco gets prepared, gets ready, and gets one tonight.
And one of the marquee matchups coming up on Sunday, obviously, it will be the key game of the week and the most likely to be hammered in terms of wagering because it presents a very interesting line. Will be the Lions and the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills who went down by a couple of points in that massive shootout with the Rams, and the Detroit Lions who they seem to be. I mean, even though they're winning, they seem to be coming back to the pack a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lions are at home in this ball game. It's a 2.5-point line right now. People I've talked to seem to be inclined to take the Buffalo Bills in this spot. What do you make of this one? Does
I
Dan Campbell use yet another bizarre motivational technique, and as we suggest, just bite the head off a live chicken before the ball game to get his
yeah,
players fired up, and they go out there and put on a great performance, or
yeah.
Buffalo
Well,
going to bounce back and not lose 2 in a row?
I think I got the easy prop under punts. Let's joke about this and say that Dan Campbell's probably not going to punt, and can they stop this Buffalo offense to make them punt? So I look at a high scoring game. The total went from 51 opener to 54.5, one of the highest totals I think we've seen all year. You watch Detroit play and they're so engaged. I have friends up there that are telling me that these guys are going on the street. They are already heroes and haven't played another playoff game this year. They feel the fan base, everyone feels the momentum that they have. They're playing. but they're also pulling a little one follower, I should say, from the Kansas City Chiefs. They're doing the win and not cover. Hey, that's how championship teams do it. They come out there and don't cover. This particular line, and I know smart people are all in Buffalo thinking that the metrics point to Josh Allen having another big game. There's another prop that I'll suggest by something I heard of metrics that they struggle defending the quarterback run. They don't really carry a spy on a quarterback. It's not part of their defensive philosophy. That should give Josh Allen a few lanes. So if you're betting a prop, you might want to think Josh Allen over yards might be one to go. I just kind of find that this game has to mean more to Detroit than Buffalo. I think if you're gauging yourself to the AFC and to this, 3 weeks ago, we probably have, well, after the Kansas City game, we probably thought this could be a Super Bowl preview. I'm looking at this game as Detroit still could lose this game and then go to Minnesota. Minnesota comes in town and beats them. They still need it for a division. They also still need it for home field. Buffalo's loss last week kind of gives Kansas City a little bit of an edge there. I don't know if they have it, but they can get to the home field advantage in the AFC. Great game. I'm surprised people like Buffalo in this spot. I kind of lean Detroit.
Can you outthink the bookmakers? And that's always a question that gamblers
Well,
have to ask themselves. I'm looking at the Chiefs game. They're only laying 4 on the road against the Browns. We know the Browns are suspect and also relegated to the wild swings in play of one Jameis Winston.
right.
The 4-point line, I would imagine, is in reference and acknowledging that, as you said, the Chiefs are pulling games out of their ass in the final minutes against opponents you would appear or seem to be of far lesser quality, which the Browns would fit into that category. Is this one of those cases, in your opinion, Mike Jones, where the bookies made the adjustment because the Chiefs haven't been covering? They've been winning but not covering, a win, no cover, one of the worst situations that you could ever put yourself in when you're a bettor. But 4 points seems like a very slim margin. When you looked at the play, especially of the Cleveland Browns in their last performance against the 49ers, is the line, has it been adjusted to the point where it's now safe to dive in like you were Greg Louganis and say this is the game that the Chiefs actually dominate and start to show that maybe they are the best team in the National Football League?
Well, I jumped when I saw it right away. Like, wow, look at that number.
It's an odd number, yeah.
Yeah,
Even number, it's an odd number.
this is where this is different than picking a game. You're picking the number, meaning, do you see 3.5 or 3 in this game? Probably not. Do you see 6 in this game? Probably so. If it's going anywhere, that's where it's going. So you're going to have people that think after watching Cleveland last week in a division game against Pittsburgh, getting beat, not covering, where they are. You're going to check injury reports, who's coming back, who's not. If Kansas City finds a way to win the game, do you bet the money line because it's only 2-1? Who the heck knows? But I think if you're betting Kansas City, you do it now because you're going to get 4. Because I have a feeling, and this would be my betting angle, you might see a 5, 5.5, possibly 6 on Sunday.
Other line that's surging. It's not surprising to me because maybe it was a little bit conservative to begin the Army-Navy game. Now, we know of the natural rivalry that this is. I think it's the 125th meeting. Army was the darling, as was Navy throughout most of the season, of the degenerate underdog bettors because they were being conceded large amounts of points in the early season. And they eventually, the bookies started to make adjustments. They were still covering the spreads no matter what they were, 12, 15, and numbers of that nature. In this game, I think they opened up as like a 4-point favorite against Navy, and now it's 6 and a hook I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty substantial move. Is that indicative, in your opinion, Mike Jones, that the bookmakers made a mistake when they put that number down with the pencil in the first place? Or is it a case where the money on Army that the people have been profiting on all year long is motivating them to say, hey, you know what, 4 points is nothing to lay, no matter who the opponent is. We're going ahead, and let's go West Point.
Yeah. The thought here is this: last look, is what we look at. I think there's history is betting. I think we remember the Monday night game as the last game we bet before we get to Sunday in the past. Now a Thursday night game. So what we saw on Monday night seems to hang in our heads. Well, who do we see last? We saw Army win a first ever conference title, dominating a team like Tulane where they were an underdog. Even though the game was at home, it's still there. I think that's where you're seeing the push. I think the line kind of is right now. I think in these games they're just so polarizing to the not to the base of the people watching, to the players, this is the game. You can go all 110. If you win this game, you walk out that you're happy as with your your performance. You could be 0-10, win this game, and all of a sudden everything goes away if you're Army or Navy. Very fun game to watch. This game is interesting. Both teams going to a bowl. That doesn't happen very often. Army with one loss. I see the number being where it is. I love taking the points in this game, but I was always of the structure. Navy 113. I think Army's on a 3-win streak or 4-win streak now. So it's like changed a little bit where it's going on. I might grab the 6.5, thinking maybe the price maker knew right at 4 and that the public money might go to drive it up. Maybe you get lucky, you get 7. Like points in rivalry games like this, especially this one. So I probably wouldn't lay Army in the game, root for the underdog like I like to do.
I'm searching through my notes here from your Tuesday appearance where you gave us some selections, and got about a minute to go here on the program. I don't know if you can recap them real quick.
Yeah, I'll give you one real quick as we talked about some decisions. I talked about the Lions earlier. I'm going out to Denver. Colts plus the 4. Here's why. The Colts defensive front has been very good. I think their offensive line is still one of the better ones in the league. So I think what Denver's done this year is control the line of scrimmage in most of their games. Here's a spot where you don't know that they will do that. I think that the Colts will put pressure on Bo Nix. Look at the last couple wins, Raiders, Falcons, who were down team going out there. They've beaten 3 a little bit lesser teams. Colts got their season on the line. Thought the line should have been a little less, maybe under 3, like they were only like 2.5 Atlanta. I like the Colts in the spot. I think the number's a little high. I think you might see it come down. I think the Colts probably – I'm going to go online and say they win the game. I'm going to say the upside. I think their playoff is on the line. If they're going to get a wild card, they're going to go head-to-head. And I'm going to take the Colts as my best bet this weekend, plus the 4.
All right, sounds good. Mike Jones, how can we get your info? I know you give out some really
the Big Gunner podcast on Spotify where we talk the hapless Giants all day long, and next week
that's got to be a short conversation. No,
yeah, it is. It's short. Yeah. We'll have Bill Belichick conversation. We have some good pointers to make on that, and then we're going to also talk a little bit about Mark Gastineau and the sack exchange and my relationship and when I ran into him in 1984. And so we do that. And picksforprofits.com where we give out one game. So either way you can get us, and we appreciate all the listeners and viewers.
I was at the ill-fated Mark Gastineau fight when he fought Tim Doc Anderson at the Fort Lauderdale War Memorial, and what turned out to be a fix. And of course, the story is rather sordid, as Tim Doc Anderson ended up shooting his manager for asking him and making him go ahead and take a dive in that fight against Gastineau. It didn't look like he could really fight all that much. Certainly would not be a guy you would want to run into in his prime on the football.
No, and I did, so I know. So
kind of weird that he couldn't let that go. I mean, let's go Jeff Wilson on this thing. Learn to forget, Mark.
Yeah,
that's what you have to learn to forget.
Yeah, he's a different character, and I was just listening to some bio coming in. NFL Sirius Radio had the producer of the show, the movie on, and said these 4 guys really were amazing on the field, but different characters off. They didn't really get along. I know Klecko and Gastineau had their issues over the years, and I'm sure they're working it all out. But it should be an interesting watch when he comes on.
All right, Mike, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Later on this afternoon.
You got it.
The Bleacher Brothers with License to Steal. Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we have to run. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll do it again tomorrow. The professor was on fire now, making a big comeback. I told you this guy could handicap. I have ultimate faith in him, and he was the guy, as we mentioned, that sometimes gets those tips as to who's in and who's out. Buried, though, by that Marcus Camby thing. Imagine you're up 27 and they cancel the second half of a basketball game that you cannot lose. That's the story of tough beats, and maybe one of the better ones I've heard. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. For the people at Greenlight Ventures, NoFilter.net, Bet Online, I'm Jeff DeForest, and we're hoping, and we're going to try and guide you again tomorrow with the professor and some plays on the college football grid on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.